Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Today's special episode with Kate Erickson, webinar and online content creator.
A lot of people want a guide that's going to skyrocket them to a successful course, a successful webinar, a successful online business. And the truth is that formula or that guide does not exist. The most important thing you can do is to continue learning and to just start.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Kate Erickson. Kate is the content creator and community leader over at Entrepreneur on Fire, a 7-day-a-week podcast that interviews today's most inspiring and successful entrepreneurs. She is the host of Kate's Take, Entrepreneur on Fire audio blog, and the author of The Fire Path, a step-by-step guide to help you create a solid foundation for your business. Kate is passionate about helping entrepreneurs create systems and processes to promote efficiency and to bring clarity to their journey. Welcome, Kate.
Rebecca, thank you so much. I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. Well, and it may sound like just reading Kate's intro that, how she fits into the whole education realm. But Kate also, over at Entrepreneur on Fire, she teaches people how to make webinars and online courses, right?
Yes, and we do have a webinar course.
And we will get into that a little further on into our interview. Since I kind of told the audience a little bit about you, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and then also your profession?
Absolutely. I'm a California girl. I grew up in San Diego, so I'm very grateful and lucky to have experienced that as a child and now into my adulthood, I suppose. I have moved around a bit, but I am currently located in San Diego. I also grew up very corporate minded. I went to college, was going to graduate with a degree and then use that degree to go get a job and hopefully climb the corporate ladder. And I actually spent, actually in terms of where I'm at right now, a greater part of my post-college years in corporate America until I was introduced to this amazing world of entrepreneurship. So I find myself now as half of the Entrepreneur on Fire team, which I'm very grateful for. Me and my partner, John Lee Dumas, we are actually partners in business and in life. So we have great fun working together and living together. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Again, I feel very lucky to have been introduced to entrepreneurship because it wasn't really something that, I graduated high school or even college thinking that entrepreneurship was a possibility for me. I couldn't really quite bridge that gap between where I was at in the education system, earning a degree and then using that degree to climb the corporate ladder. I didn't know what bridge would take me from that point to entrepreneurship. So I kind of just followed the path that I was supposed to be on for quite some time. And then finally took my entrepreneurial leap, luckily in 2011. So yeah.
That is great. And it's interesting where our life takes us, huh?
Absolutely.
There's never a plan for it. So can you tell us what your personal educational experience was?
Yes. So I grew up in the public school system all through high school, which I'm actually very grateful for. I feel like I was exposed to and experienced, a lot of culture here in San Diego. We have a big melding pot of, a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different, levels of income in this city. And I'm very grateful for that. I feel like the experiences I had in high school really taught me a lot about what it's like to live a different type of lifestyle than, not everybody lives the same type of lifestyle, which I think a lot of kids in the school system might be a little bit sheltered from that. So grew up in the public school system. I went to college at the University of San Francisco. So I moved up to the Bay Area, which was really great. Living in a city like San Francisco, was a great experience, and I really appreciated that. And then I actually transferred back to the University of San Diego to come back home, and I graduated from there in 2005. My school college experience was quite flawless. I mean, other than the end of my sophomore year when I was in San Francisco and really looking to get back to San Diego, I would say, if you can call that a difficult time, it was probably the most difficult time I had in college, just because, I was missing home a lot. I wanted to be back by my friends. I was ready to come back to San Diego. But overall, in terms of what I got from my education, my learning experience, and then even after I graduated, I took a year off and then ended up going back to get my graduate degree. Yeah, I actually missed school. I wanted to be back in school at that point in time. And of course, I thought that a graduate degree was only going to help me on that corporate track I was on. So, I have nothing bad to say about my educational experience. I feel very grateful to have gone through that. And I think that in living in the dorm rooms and, taking care of yourself monetarily, paying rent and living away from home, I think there's a lot to be said about that experience, for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. It gives those life experiences you just can't replace, with any other type of teaching. So I noticed that you had like an early aspirations to be a professor, and you worked in the educational system for a while. And I just want to know what your experience was there, and then how you made the shift to what you're doing now.
Yeah, my experience trying to actually get into the educational system in terms of being a professor was quite frustrating. I went back to graduate school to get my graduate degree in English because I wanted to teach at the college level, English literature. And as I was going through getting my degree, I came up against quite a few roadblocks where I didn't feel like the support was there from the faculty. Mainly when I went to graduate, I was given the choice to either write a thesis or take an exam. And I chose to write a thesis because I was an English major. It only made sense to me that I would write a thesis rather than take a test. And I didn't have the support from the faculty in writing my thesis because you had to have a leader, so to speak, and then you had to have 3 people on your panel in order to, I guess, kind of assess your thesis and, decide whether or not you were going to pass. And I couldn't get 3 members of the faculty to support my thesis. And so that was quite frustrating. I ended up taking the test and passing it. So luckily I graduated with my graduate degree. But even once I had my graduate degree, that was in 2008 when I graduated. And in California, that was pretty much the year of pink slips everywhere. I mean, people were being laid off from their job. There wasn't the financial support in the educational system that was there previously. And so a lot of faculty cuts were being made. And even going to community colleges and trying to get substitute teacher opportunities was very difficult because, of course, I needed to have a full-time job in order to support myself. And in order to try to be a substitute teacher, you basically have to be available 24/7 in some respects, especially for at that level, the college, night teaching and all that kind of stuff. So it was really, really difficult for me to get into it. And I ended up finally, giving up on it because I didn't see where I was ever going to get my foot in the door unless I could not have a job, which wasn't an option for me.
Well, and when we kind of talked earlier, when we move to the entrepreneur kind of side of education, and we don't really realize that there is one of those sides, like something you can do to educate people that's kind of your own business, because we see so much. I mean, we kind of grow up in the brick and mortar system where, we feel like we have to be in a classroom and we have to have an employment that way. And I think that's kind of it's interesting about what you're doing now is, now you are a teacher of sorts. And how has that changed your paradigm of how you can teach and not have to be like in a physical classroom with students?
It's such a world of difference to me, Rebecca, and it blows my mind that in 2008, the internet was a pretty big deal in 2008, yet given the education that was surrounding me in my undergrad and my graduate degrees, not once did anyone ever present me with the idea that I could actually just teach online and create my own type of school and create, my own type of learning curriculum that could be shared not only with, 20 people in my classroom, but potentially 20 million people around the world. And that really left a sour taste in my mouth. I invested time and money and energy and resources into giving school everything I had, because I thought that once I had my degree that that was, all my hard work was going to be rewarded with the job that I wanted. And when that didn't happen, and not only did that not happen, but I still was never even given the courtesy of somebody saying like, oh, by the way, it might be kind of tough for you to get a teaching job right now, but have you ever thought about, maybe creating some online courses that you could share with people? I mean, nobody ever said that to me. And so looking back now, it just surprises me that even with how relevant and, big the internet was at that time, that nobody would have ever even talked to me about that.
Yeah, it's not like when I graduated college, we were just using it for, writing papers. It was basically a fancy typewriter. But yeah, it is interesting how you really have to, I guess, with education. I mean, what I'm seeing is it has to start like a ground. I can't think of what I'm trying to say. Kind of like the old model and the old style of education was that we had a classroom and there's a lecture style teacher and it was kind of compulsory. And the new style of teaching is like flipping the classrooms where the kids are expected to go online and do more self-directed courses and things like that. But to really get that to change, it's not, I mean, it can't be a top-down type mentality. I've really seen, and maybe with our podcasting, what we've seen is it has to be a bottom-up innovation, and like the homeschooling movement is using the internet like, it's on fire. And and I guess I see them like the inventors in their garage, trying to come up with these new ways, these new modalities of learning. And that's kind of what I was hoping you could help some of our teachers do, is how do we make effective webinars and online courses? I mean, with that knowledge that you have now, how can we make those effective, and what are the steps that we can take?
Sure. I mean, I've learned so much in the last 2 years after becoming an entrepreneur. I mean, more than I probably learned in 4 years of college, just because college doesn't necessarily give you the tools for experiential learning the same way that entrepreneurship does. And for me, experiential learning is so important. And I think that it gives us the ability to get where we want to go faster. And it gives us the ability to, share, I guess, a model for people to follow, to where they have the steps that they need to take and maybe a core outline of what can help get them where they want to be. But it's really about helping people understand that you need to experience this. You need to take the steps that I've given you, or, follow an outline, but you actually have to go out and do the work. And that's what I really appreciate about online courses and webinars, where you can teach an unlimited number of people, either live or through a replay or recorded course. You can give them the tools and the resources they need to go make something happen, and it's on them to go make it happen. And I never saw too much of that in my own education, to where my teachers were giving me tools and resources and then telling me to go out and try it out and learn from, my mistakes or learn from what worked. It was more like, write this paper in, the confines of this room and then hand it to me, and I'm going to tell you whether or not you did good or not. And for me, being able to teach people online through webinars, through online courses, puts the power in their hands. It's very empowering for the individual who's watching or learning to then be able to go out and dictate themselves whether or not they're going to be a success with it. It's not up to the teacher anymore.
Yeah, it definitely is more of a student-driven, self-directed type style of learning. So how effective do you think webinars and online courses are?
I think they can be incredibly effective, but again, it really does it puts the onus on the viewer to actually take the information and the tools and the resources that they're being taught and do something with them. In my experience, how we even start to create these online courses or come up with the idea to hold a webinar on a certain topic is really, it's a very interactive process. It's never a teacher coming up with, ideas out of nowhere, then presenting it to a class and then saying, okay, give me something back. It's more an interactive process where, like, if we were going to create a new webinar tomorrow, it wouldn't be up to John and I to go research and figure out what we were going to do the webinar on in the traditional educational sense. It would be us going to our audience and saying, hey guys, what are you struggling with right now? Like, what's something that's keeping you from taking a step forward in your business? Or what's something that's keeping you from bringing your podcast to the next level? Whatever that may be, we're going to let our audience help us in that content creation by telling us what they're struggling with. And then once we know that, that's our opportunity to then do whatever research we have to do to put together something that can actually help solve their pain point. And, that's been a huge lesson for me on my entrepreneurial journey, is that it's not, I don't have to have the weight of the world on my shoulders to come up with ideas and content constantly. I'm going to let my audience help me determine that so that I can actually serve them in the way that they want and need.
Well, and it sounds like what you're doing, what you're saying is that education is taking more of a customer-driven type route, where before it was, like we talked about, you're just giving the information, lecture style. It's very compulsory, and the teacher gets to decide what the students will learn. Whereas, like I said, where we flip the classroom, where the student has to decide what they want to learn, and then the teacher creates that content. Is that kind of what you were saying in a way?
Yeah, that's definitely how we've kind of, set the tone for our business. We didn't create Entrepreneur on Fire for ourselves. We created it for our audience. And so if it's just going to be John and I teaching whatever we feel like, well, it's going to be very hard to build an audience off from that because we're not listening to what they want. So yes, you're exactly right.
Yeah. So how important do you think that feedback is from the student in creating an effective course?
Integral. I don't think that you can create an effective course without it, because I'd always kind of believed this whole build it and they will come idea until I built a business and then waited for people to come and nothing happened.
Yeah.
So I have that experience in trying to start my own business and failing miserably because I wasn't listening to what people actually wanted and needed. I just created what I thought would help people. And then I was wondering why nobody was coming. And it was because I never went out and talked to my target audience to find out what it actually was that they wanted and needed. And therefore, I was left with a lot of time down the drain, a lot of frustration, on my part for spending 6 months trying to create something that nobody wanted, when in the end, all I needed to do was reach out to my target audience in the first place, start with that, and then build from there. And I think it's a continuous loop. I don't think that there's one time that you go out and talk to your audience and then they give you feedback and you're like, all right, time to build my business. I think it's, a continuous feedback loop where every time you create something, you should be listening to the feedback that you're getting to lead you one step closer to perhaps creating that online course or building that webinar that you want to teach.
So in order to not waste our time and create classes that students will actually use and need, what do you think are the steps that need to be taken to be successful in creating an online course?
Well, I really think it starts, of course, with whoever the instructor or, teacher of this content is, to have a vested interest in what it is that they're teaching. Beyond feeling fired up and passionate about what it is you're teaching, of course, you want it to be something that you have experience in, so that when questions and such do come, you're able to, pull from a bank of knowledge to be able to answer those and provide the type of value that people are really looking for. The bar has been raised very high with how many online courses and webinars and free content there is out there. So if you can't place yourself as an authority in the niche or area that you're looking to teach, even if it's not through yourself, but through maybe guests that you bring on your course or guests that you bring onto your webinar, you need to have some way of placing yourself as a credible figure to teach that content. And then beyond that, I think the next step is to figure out who exactly is it you're trying to talk to. Who is that target audience? They might not be there right now, but who do you want them to be, or who do you think that they are? And once you've identified that, we call it an avatar here at Entrepreneur on Fire, and, it's commonly referred to as an avatar, the one ideal perfect viewer or student of your content. Who are they? What are their pain points? What are they looking for? What are they struggling with? And where are they looking to go, so that you can kind of start to craft that content around these ideas. But, it's important to kind of figure out who you think they are, because it's at that point that you can actually go out and start talking to them, like we had discussed before, in online communities, at meetups, at conferences that you attend. You need to start putting yourself in front of these people, whether it's online or in person, so that you can start that feedback loop.
Exactly. That's what I've discovered, that makes a big difference in the kind of content that you put out. Before we go on, let us take a minute and learn more about our sponsors.
Hey, fire starters, are you looking for a new way to listen to the Luminous Mind? Try listening on Stitcher. Haven't heard of Stitcher? Think of it as radio on demand. You can listen to the Luminous Mind anytime, anywhere. There is no downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. Just stream your favorite podcasts, such as the Luminous Mind. Stitcher is available on iOS, Android, Nook, iPad, and also from your favorite internet browser. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. And make sure you rate and review the Luminous Mind, so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.
When you're surrounded by darkness, open your eyes. Look around you. It's a beautiful life. Don't waste time. Open your mind. Have no regrets. Paint the sky your favorite color. Your favorite color.
Welcome back to the Luminous Mind with Kate Erickson, Entrepreneur on Fire webinar and online content creator. So what are some specific services that you offer people in helping them create online courses and then the system deliveries to the public?
Well, we have a free webinar course, which is a 10-day email and video series that we offer to people who are, interested in finding out more about how webinars can help their business, how webinars can help you get your message out to a large audience. So we have that free 10-day course. And then we also have a paid course that's called Webinar on Fire. And that is really a complete package of video tutorials, a membership site, resources, videos, and a private Facebook group where we have a community of people who are all looking to leverage webinars in their business to either just provide free value and teach something to their audience, or, in some cases to sell a product or a service that they have. But there are a ton of really great courses out there that do teach, maybe not necessarily webinars, but how to actually create online courses. I don't know if you've heard of David Siteman Garland, but he has an online course that's called Create Awesome Online Courses. And in this course, it's very much like Webinar on Fire, but he's walking people through the process of creating an online course. So there's tons of great resources out there, some of them free, some of them paid. But in terms of what we have here at Entrepreneur on Fire, I would say that, the webinar course, the free 10-day course, and then Webinar on Fire are the two that we offer.
Great. So what are some habits that you found that help to make you successful?
I think, consistently getting up and doing the work, consistently waking up in the morning with a drive and the motivation to learn something new that day, to invest in myself, whether that be, time to read an article, time to read a book, time to watch a video. I think that continuing to learn as teachers is so integral, especially when stuff is changing so fast. John and I really try to keep our content, very forward thinking, and we try to stay ahead of the curve in terms of what it is that we're sharing with our audience. So I think that something that has kept me there is my continuous drive and motivation to continue learning every single day, whether that, just be reading an article or picking up a new book or otherwise.
And to go with that drive, what is something that you're currently working on that you're most excited about?
Oh, man. Well, I actually just recently launched an online course that helps people with really building the foundation of their business. So for any entrepreneurs who are just kind of getting started in the game, it really walks over actually some of the ideas that I talked about earlier in this chat that we're having. Like, figuring out what it is that you want to teach, having a passion and an expertise, defining your avatar like we chatted about. So I'm really excited about that. It's been a long time in the making. I actually wrote a book on it as well, and it's called The Fire Path. And so that's kind of our, step-by-step guide to helping people and getting started with our online business.
That is so fun. I'm going to have to check that out and see what I can do to be a little bit more creative with creating content. So what are some long-term goals that you have for yourself?
Long-term goals, this might sound kind of funny, but my long-term goal is to actually continue to stay present. I'm definitely into setting goals and having high aspirations and all that good stuff. But I've found what has really helped move me forward is to continue focusing on the work that I'm doing right now and continuing to focus on who I could be serving right now instead of, getting caught up with what comes in the future. So my long-term goal is to continue to do that day in and day out, is really just stay present and focus on what I can be doing right now to move myself forward.
Well, and sometimes when we're focused on, in the future, we really don't just really appreciate those people around us.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So what advice or encouragement would you give to someone who's just trying to start out?
I would say that, again, this kind of goes back to something that we talked about a bit here today, is I wouldn't get frustrated or caught up in the learning process. A lot of people want a guide that's going to skyrocket them to a successful course, a successful webinar, a successful online business. And the truth is that formula or that guide does not exist. We talked about experiential learning before. The most important thing you can do is to continue learning and to just start. Whether that is you launching your first webinar to 2 people that are watching, or whether that's you going out and talking to an audience that you don't even know is actually going to be your audience, just start so that you can continue or start that path to moving forward towards what it is that you want to create. Because the guide that's going to get you there tomorrow, it doesn't exist. So I would be patient and, continue getting up every day and putting in the work. It's going to snowball and it's going to pay off if you continue doing that day after day.
And sometimes having some small failures is a better learning process than just, like you said, never even starting, because we're afraid to fail, that we have to have it absolutely perfect.
Yes. And I know that's quite tough. I mean, I've done it myself many times as, pushing something off because I want it to be better, or I know that I could do a better job. But, that's only just going to keep you in a cycle of not moving forward. And whether it, fail fast, because that's the way that you're going to learn the best, as you pointed out. And that's what's going to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, that's one thing in our educational system now. I mean, technology is moving us so fast that if we don't grab a hold of it and move with it, we can find ourselves kind of left in the dust in some archaic, type of mentality. So great.
Absolutely.
So you gave us the webinar course from David Siteman. Do you have any other books or resources that you think our audience, that you'd like to share with them, that you think they could use?
Oh, well, one that I really love is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. He talks about the essentials in our life. And, it's really helped me on my journey, because I've had the curse of saying yes to way too many things, I know that a lot of other people, struggle with this. And what Greg lays out in his book is really a very base level, easy to follow, clear understanding that we don't have to do it all. And there comes a time that you have to say no, and it's actually more often than you should be saying yes. So I really love that book. It's done a ton for my mindset, and it's really helped me with my productivity. So if anybody's feeling like they're kind of struggling with not enough time, feeling overwhelmed, like they don't have good organization, this book is really great.
Well, and focusing on like one particular aspect of our life can really cause us to, enjoy that area and pinpoint it. I actually heard, I was listening to one of your audio blogs, and you're talking about that book and having like one purpose. We all have what was the thing you were saying? We all have like 5 different points of things we think are the most important, but you were saying that we need to just narrow it down to just one, point that we need to get
exactly.
done. So
yeah, it was all around priority.
Yeah, and sometimes when we get that one thing done, it allows us to propel forward a little bit more. So
definitely that picks up that momentum.
Yeah, that's great. So what kind of legacy are you hoping to leave then?
I mean, I would really love to leave a legacy where, people are encouraged to follow what it is that they truly want to do. I mean, if I would have had the frame of mind to continue following what I wanted to do when I couldn't get that teaching job, maybe I would have found my way to where I am now a lot sooner. I gave up on that, and I don't regret that because, I don't have any regrets about how I got to where I am right now, but I could have potentially gotten there faster. So, if there is truly something that you want to do, I hope that the legacy I'll leave is that you should continue pursuing it until you have it, if it's really something that you want to have.
I mean, like you said, nobody pointed in the traditional world, no one pointed you in this direction. But it just comes down to, you taking a leap and looking around at other modalities of what you could be doing versus just sitting in a classroom.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think that's so important to continue, stretching ourselves to check under those rocks that are not unturned yet.
Yeah. If you've ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese, you always have to have your running shoes on.
Yes.
So before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting words of advice or maybe a favorite quote that you'd like to share with our audience? And then tell us how we can connect with you.
Yes, I would love to share a quote from John Maxwell that's one of my favorites. And he said, the secret of your success lies in your daily routine. I'm a big fan of routines, and, mine has served me very well. So I encourage everybody to kind of think about that, what you do when you wake up and what your daily routine is like and how that's helping you move one step closer to your goals. Rebecca, we talked about the free webinar course. If anybody's interested in checking that out, they can just go to thewebinarcourse.com. And again, it's completely free. 10 days will teach you how to create and present webinars. And any other information on Entrepreneur on Fire, myself or John, our blog, our podcast, all that good stuff is over at EOFire.com.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Like I said to you when we tried to get connected, or my husband said to you, is you and John are the reason why I'm podcasting and trying to mentor people in the educational industry now. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on here with us.
I love it. Thank you so much for inviting me. That's really great because I wish that you would have been doing this, 10 years ago when I graduated college. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, hopefully there's some young college student out there that has been, that spark is put in there and they see something else and we've illuminated their minds. So.
Oh, I hope so.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. No, it's lots of fun.
Thanks for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Kate Erickson, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Also, be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list so you can receive our weekly audio blog, The Spark. We would love to have you join our program. Do so by going to the scheduling tab and become a fire starter today. Help support the podcast by making all your Amazon purchases through the free Amazon widget on our website, theluminousmind.net. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Google+. Get our audio content on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. Leave us a review. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.